welcome everybody to the town board work session for May 8th, 2024. We're starting right a little after 5 p.m. So instructions to join remotely. We are remote, so we're streaming to Facebook, YouTube, and to our website. We've got a meeting here in person, and we've got a Zoom set up for anybody that is looking to participate remotely. Instructions for that information is at the top of each of our agendas. Next up, I would ask Councilor Bollinger to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so really the reason we scheduled this work session tonight was to continue the review of our code analysis that we're working on with general code. I know we have some folks from ZBA here, and there's a meeting, so there's definitely some feedback ready to go. We'll defer to kind of the other boards, and then we'll jump in with any comments or questions that we have for clarification. And just as a reminder, we are looking to get packets back by May 23rd with all the feedback we've got, so that the team can kind of come back together, digest all that information. We'll make the decisions that need to be made. And then we'll have some public hearings in summer to early fall of 2024 for this overall code review. Before we get into the general code review, we did have Mayor Kapinski reach out to talk a little bit about the code, specifically the code of ethics. So if you want to come up to the podium, just 5 minutes if you want to just kind of cover everything, and then we can enter right into a discussion.
As you're working on the code, one of the things that I think that we looked at last year, there are a lot of issues the board was dealing with. And one of the things that we looked at was the code of ethics. The code of ethics, as we've scanned town records, hasn't been updated since March 13th, 1991. And based on those records, the code authorized the establishment of a 3-member board of ethics. All reside in the town. 2 of the members would be persons other than people that are elected, appointed officers, or employees of the town. And 1 member would be an elected or appointed official or employee. In recent years, there's been no record of a code of ethics. I've talked to people who have served on this board, prior to you, and as far back as about 2000, they have no recollection of any board of ethics. Yet the code calls for it. I do think because of changes in law since 1991, the review is long overdue. But most significantly, there were changes in law in 2014 when the general municipal code for the state, which is referenced as the basis for this code, changed. And so there had been no review or update. For example, in the former code, there's a clause for gifts, and people could accept gifts up to $25. Well, there was a minor change in the code that raised it to $75, but there's a lot more, and that really needs to be looked at. Because the current code does call for a board of ethics, there's no reason that board could not be appointed now. And what I'm recommending to this group, as you're reviewing code, appoint a board of ethics and have them begin to review the code for you. It's complex. They would need to just review the current code, search the history of the town code if we can get it. If there's some records that may show why this board of ethics was not appointed, but we did have this law in effect since 1991. The other thing that they would need to do is go through the amendments to New York State General Municipal Law, and that's Article 18. And there have been amendments to that. And I'm saying that this is a timely process, but perhaps the way that attack it is to, appoint the Board of Ethics now. And then they should be charged to come back to the town council with recommendations with respect to the drafting and adoption of amendments to the current code.
That's a great idea.
Okay, I hope that you find this helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I
yeah.
think this is very important for our community. So, I would encourage you to.
And thanks for the materials you sent.
I thought that the Board of Ethics would only meet if necessary and was for the purpose of if there was a conflict of interest with the board.
That's true.
Well, that's one of the
conflict is not with
reasons.
the board, it's a conflict. They only are, but they need to be appointed to, so
They need
that
to
we
be-
have somebody to call.
But to clarify, they don't review our town code and then make
Right.
recommendations on the town code. It's about the agents and appointees and elected and employees.
Right,
in their
that's one
operations.
facet of it.
Okay.
That's one facet.
Yeah.
Conflict of interest is another facet of it.
Right, yeah.
But, you have to have a process. I mean, if somebody has concerns, an employee has concerns, somebody on this board has concerns, you might have to make a decision about a topic that comes up before the board. And you may have, some affiliation or some, employment issues that you need to have clarified.
Mhm.
And, this protects you, it protects your employees, but it also provides accountability to the community.
I guess my question was like, I agree with you on all of those things. I never understood that committee would review our town code. I thought they would serve.
No, the code of ethics.
Yeah.
The code, no, just the code of ethics.
Oh, okay,
Yes,
that
code of
makes more
ethics.
sense. I was like, are they gonna be experts on like,
I heard what you said, code, I took it
Yeah.
more broad.
Okay.
Well, to
that makes more sense.
roll back the clock to 2014 and charge this newly formed committee with at least, until you're called by the bat signal that there might be a conflict of interest.
Right,
This is your first project.
right,
Review the code of
right.
ethics.
Yeah.
Exactly,
And
that's a
bring it
great
into
idea.
compliance.
Right, that makes more sense to me. I was like, are they really qualified to review our entire town code? Who wants?
And we
to
would
do
need
that?
to give them legal counsel as
Yeah.
well.
Well, actually, the town code was being reviewed in 2019.
And they
and-
missed this.
And the code of ethics was put on hold for review, but it's time, and we need to, to address this.
Is it mandatory that we have this board or what's that?
Yeah, you do, yes, it is mandatory that you have a code of ethics.
Current
Yes.
town code, yes, we adopted this. We don't have to have a code of ethics, but we have adopted one in the past, so.
Yeah,
We're still guided by general municipal law, specifically for like our conflicts of interest. General municipal law does that, so that's where when we have something and someone goes, oh, do I have a conflict of interest? We check with the attorney.
Right, I've abstained in the past, like when my dad's accounting firm, we're entering a contract with him,
Yeah.
like one of our first board meetings, and I was so excited to abstain. because of the
Yeah,
conflict.
well, and that's where I think the Board of Ethics will help us kind of narrow in on anything above and beyond, like kind of New York state law.
So are we currently in violation of our own law, but by not having one, or is it like we
We
have a? code
have
of-
a code, but we have never appointed the people.
Yeah.
That's what we're in violation.
yeah, and the
So we
code,
are in violation of that.
I mean, there's no,
yeah, but the code is current. And the other thing with the code, John,
Mhm.
is that according to law, you're supposed to distribute it to every employee, elected official, and appointed official. So it's important that you have something that's current.
yeah, I don't remember, I do think the Code of Ethics is in the employee handbook that gets handed out there.
But I think it's the 1991
Well, it's in the
version.
1991, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I was working for the town and somebody handed me the current code of ethics, I would look at it and said, ethics board, what is all that?
Mhm.
So you really need to address that.
My understanding in the past was that it was optional, based on conversations with Tim. And we didn't need to.
This is the type of thing where we have a code that says, there hereby establish a board of ethics consisting of 3 members to be appointed by the town board, will be there, so.
Yeah, I think we live in work in an environment where doing more than the bare minimum is probably the way to go.
I'm not saying that I'm not in favor of it, I'm just trying to ascertain if we're in violation of something. Not that I don't think
Technically,
we should
we are.
have it.
I think we are.
Yeah.
Okay, because Tim had said that it was optional if we wanted to do it.
The establishing our own code of ethics, because otherwise we would basically be subsumed by
The state.
with the state law and the county board.
Okay.
Yeah, well, if you didn't have, a way to deal with this, if you didn't have a town board of ethics, matters could be referred to the county. And
Yeah.
do you- and
That
do-
was my
and
next
do-
comment.
and do you want to do that? I mean, I think some of these issues with employees, that you probably want to keep local and close to the chest as confidentiality issues. So
Yeah.
I, you know.
So
encourage you to do
I
that.
think then what we will want to do is, majority of such members shall be persons other than elected or appointed officials or employees of the town, but the board shall include one member who is an elected or appointed officer or employee of the town. So we need to find at least one employee or officer who would like to serve on the Board of Ethics, and then we will have to identify 2 other people.
So Lillian and I are working on some nominees for the other people.
Okay.
And John, one other thing, they should have counsel as they go through these laws.
Yeah, so this could be complicated because would the argument be that they need outside counsel that isn't the town attorney?
I think it would depend on the circumstance.
But just because,
Because if the potential conflict was with the law firm, we would have to be able to.
Because we have had questions on that in the past,
Yeah.
like where there was like representation or a
Well, even
family,
just, they need an objective counsel to do it.
right?
You know, I mean, we still handle those conflicts of interest.
Sure.
attorneys,
So
I think-
we're talking about having counsel when the committee is called in to investigate.
If the,
Not
not
the initial
Right.
project.
the initial
doing
project,
code
but in the,
ethics.
in the
Initial code
event that
ethics project
the
can be
law
within
firm
us.
Yes, I agree with that.
we need to be prepared to pay for outside.
Right.
Okay, so then we will work on getting those 3 members appointed. And then we'll have to confirm with everybody at first meeting. They'll meet, we'll have the town attorney present answering questions,
Mhm.
and then they will set to work to, work on the code of ethics. And we just have to see if there's, I don't know how much of it because this is a board, so
Mhm.
they can all go off in separate directions, but even 2 of them working together is a quorum. And they're subject to open meetings law, so it sounds like, basically, we're gonna find 3 people, they're gonna meet and say, okay, we're all gonna go read the code, we're gonna read separately what New York State law is, and then they're gonna come back to the table and then work
We
on
have
the.
one open meeting and
And
resolve
then,
it.
you know, basically, either
Okay.
somebody will draft it but we'll have to just make sure that we're not.
you should give them a charge, John, you know, as to what they're supposed to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that sounds good.
okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Are you accepting any other comments?
As long as it's about the town
Real
code.
quick. You know, and Caitlin, you probably experienced this as well. In my career, I had been subject to many compliance courses and whatnot. And the positive way to look at an ethics board is we would frequently go to the people in compliance, which is the moral equivalent of this, and say, hey, I got this, this, and this. Is that a problem? Do I need approval and whatnot? And it keeps you ahead of problems. So it doesn't just become a complaint board. And the ones that will probably have the most trouble, you're an investment professional, Ed Theobald was, you know, there's things that you're working on or investing in that potentially, you know, you might want to have somebody take a look at. So again, you stay out of it.
Are you also a financial advisor?
What's that?
You're also a financial advisor?
No, I'm not. No,
Do
I
you have
was,
a compliance department?
well, as running a $400 million loan origination operation, there was a lot of compliance,
Yeah.
similar but different than what
Yeah.
you did. So,
I have a love-hate relationship with compliance.
well, we all, it's like, yeah, I know.
It's like 6 hours of training and those
Every year you
compliance
gotta
people.
retrain and whatnot. So, but, and as you choose the members of the board, somebody that has a lot of compliance background, like a former banker or somebody that has a fund of knowledge will help you develop a better code without having to start from ground zero.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, there's definitely people out there who enjoy getting into the weeds, and I think we should look for those people out there. And like perhaps a legal background isn't quite necessary, but that might be advisable, but with the compliance people, like questions, they're annoying, but they are really looking out for my best interest.
Yeah. So, you said, you and William are working on a list of folks, okay?
Yes.
But I will add that
I've told her.
I was looking at more legal people, but I'll look into like insurance people.
Yeah, insurance, and you would know the types of people that undergo compliance, it's banking, insurance, securities.
Yeah, and just because you're in that industry, like myself, I would never presume to be an expert on compliance. Like, but there are financial
There are
advisors.
people who do that.
Like they have like a financial advisor that has their 24, for example, like they're the ones running the branch offices, so like. It would have to like really make sure that there's someone, like I'm not an expert, that's why I call my back office and ask them questions, but like my father's 24 and he has much more knowledge about compliance, so we could, I think that's a good suggestion that industry has a lot of knowledge about how these things work behind the scenes.
You also will need an HR person if you can find one. That would be very helpful because of the employees that are impacted.
Well, we'll have one person from inside town hall, correct?
Yes.
So perhaps
We will ask around and see.
see if someone,
Or
perhaps someone in our HR department would be interested.
We have any chair?
And who?
Not an
But
overall.
also Kay is
Okay.
also an HR.
Great. So, next up, I would say anyone from the ZBA want to share any of the feedback you.
More, Mr. Best?
Oh,
One quick, of course. Thank you so much. It'll take a minute. I just was reading through the document, and I wanted to point out two things. One, my ears perk up when I see not-for-profit, public-private partnership and philanthropic. It's just 10 of the times. So in this document, there are two phrases.
What
What
document?
is, yeah, can you just identify?
The document that was signed by, which is that document, the redevelopment document.
Oh,
Oh, we're not in that.
that's
right now,
it, that's,
we've got a public hearing coming up for that at the meeting.
This is about the
At
codes.
town meeting, right?
This is about the code, yeah.
Yeah.
So can I just finish?
So is this about the,
LDC.
yeah, so that's not part of
That's not
town
this
code?
We have the
Yeah.
public hearing coming up later this evening and you'll be welcome to speak at
Okay,
that.
so 3 times I struck out.
I know,
I'll
this
come back
is
to the
this
fourth.
1 hour we have together.
Yeah,
We've got
the work session specifically, sorry.
sorry.
So then,
But we will
do have
listen
the
to
hearing
it.
today.
Yeah.
You will concur, for
so
sure.
then, and who from the ZBA, I don't know if you guys collected
I
some
know you guys,
feedback or
you had a good discussion.
couple questions
Yeah,
you
we
want
had
to
a-
put for us, the group?
We had a great meeting, Carrie.
What's that?
Do you have the notes that we put together for
Yes,
that?
I do, and I'm sorry I didn't type them up and get them to everybody. So on page 24 of the code analysis portion,
Can you talk to the microphone? If you're gonna give them-
yeah, under unsafe building, well, no, actually, right on the very top of that page, no, D,
Okay.
that letter D, they're requesting that we add environment to that for health, safety, morals, and general welfare. They want to add environment. So just an adding of verbiage to that.
So
D at the
i.e.
very top.
danger to the environment, health,
Yes.
that-
Yes,
So you guys dissociated the fund.
Absolutely.
they most certainly did.
That's what we're looking for.
Thank you for that.
They did a really good job.
Tom, you talk those two.
What's that?
Yeah, manager, did you find manager on page 12? Chapter 21, manager.
All right, so chapter 147, I'm sorry, I don't have the page number.
147 is going quite a ways.
Yeah, it kind of jumps all over the place.
Leave that sewer.
Yeah, no
and
water.
it- Water.
Yep.
And it was regarding the,
Clarification on the fee, so page 55.
So the question with that, it talks in there about how Aqua.
Where are we exactly on that page 55?
Towards.
C,
See?
yep, C at the top there, it says section 147.13.
So the question was, is there, it discusses in there, there's a fee that's collected by the town. But if you were to have your water shut off, you pay that, there's a fee a reconnect fee that you pay to the county. Is there an additional fee that the town collects? Because that's the way the code reads.
Okay, so that's section B, not C.
Fee, yeah.
Yeah, that's for the one just above it.
To turn your water back on.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was unclear if the town has an additional fee.
And I don't know how the town would even know that this had occurred.
I don't either.
That's a really good catch.
Yeah.
I think that's something that
Did
probably
we
should
used to
just
do
be-
water at one point?
No, we never did one.
I think that would probably be something that you'd have to discuss with Aqua.
Yeah, isn't there at some point, like, there's a registry of unpaid, delinquent aqua accounts that get sent to the town?
I don't know.
I've seen a list.
But what we can do
I
is,
think that's only if it's an abandoned property, isn't it?
yeah.
So
But, I mean, I think what we do is we just reach out to Aqua and say, hey, we have this on the books to take in this fee. We don't have, like, I'm assuming we would be passing that fee on to Aqua. So the question is, do they have their own enforcement ability to
They
collect
have
this?
their own collection, yeah.
Right, they do.
So it's probably worth it, you know.
Yeah, so
where
let's,
do they collect the fee on?
so let's make, so the note on this is talk to Aqua.
Yep. All right, and then, so regarding the definition of family, I know we had
Getting into
asked,
the meeting stuff.
So there was no question on C?
no, that was my error.
No problem.
I could not read my own handwriting. I was trying to keep up with them. That was my fault. So regarding the definition for family, and Tim or Warren, correct me if I'm wrong, they're looking to make sure that whatever definition we come up with is maybe a separate definition than what we use for the ADU, when
So that was-
the ADU comes through.
Yeah, so that was actually a recommendation of Jamie.
Mhm.
Jamie said that the ADU piece of it, it should have a different definition than what the townwide definition of family is. Because of the specifications of what comes with the ADU. She can explain it a little better than I can, but right time she was talking about how you want to spell out very clearly in the ADU portion, what a family is defined at. Whereas the rest of the town code, it can be a broader description.
Tim, did she say like different or separate and distinct?
She said, I believe she just said different.
She did say different.
I don't recall her saying something.
So she wants this one to be broad, and then we could add specificity if we wanted to the ADU.
Correct.
Yes,
Yep.
I think that's a great way to put it, Sarah.
I mean, there's these two here that are not even, like this one's not even a full sentence. And then there's like Ithaca is,
Yeah, I would think we could reach consensus that Ithaca is overboard.
yeah,
It's all social justice.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Well, it's also written for a college town, like,
Yeah.
they're imagining the worst in all circumstances.
Right, yeah, things need to be spelled out in the college now.
Yeah.
But
I think we
I,
have more in common with Pittsburgh than Ithaca, but
Yeah.
DeWitt's obviously right there and they're a little bit more specific also.
Yes, this is where there should be a distinction between the two for, like that I was saying, that you want the ADU piece to be.
That was just.
yeah, thank you, and I'm sure that Jamie will have a chance to read the final version before we go anywhere, so if there's a word we need to change.
We spent a lot of time talking about that.
Who we shorted.
I think too, what we'll do is we'll make sure that as far as everything existing within the code, what we define as family for the town code definition, we'll make sure it works with everything we have. And then really what it comes down to is more so, I think, probably making it more specific for the ADU law.
If that's even required.
Yeah.
So I have I don't know, I want to make sure you guys are done with what you want to say about family, because I have a question. for you.
One,
I think we found it at this.
That
yeah, it
was
was just the
basically it.
separation, making sure that the town was covered when the separation between ADU happens, and that we were all set with that. There is one more item on here. It is on page 57.
She had a question. Sarah, you had a question
want
about
I
family?
have
family,
specifically
right?
about family.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're
okay.
not
Let's
talking.
do
So
family.
another way that family is used is in two family, and that, which is a different part of thinking.
Right.
And I just want to make sure what we say a family is would match what the law says a two-family is. Or that we're not conflicting with our own selves by defining family differently in those two cases.
Well, I think that's where, when it gets into the state, they talk about dwelling units,
Right.
multiple family
So
dwelling units.
that's where I want to make
and
sure
then they
that
do-
whatever the state law is that defines a two-family, that our code is consistent
Yes.
with whatever that
That was
is.
that was kind of the vein that Jamie was taking when she was talking.
So if there's a definition, like the state definition has to be our minimal, and then if we want to add to it, but we can't have less than what the state is, because then it will screw up if somebody wants to sue somebody about a two-family house and it's the
Well,
wrong
and I
thing.
will say too, especially in the conversation we had with the attorney
Mhm.
about the ADUs, I think the ADUs are gonna be more focused on form of housing
Mhm.
and less, I don't think the ADU was really considerate of the actual family unit. It's
Right.
more about, is this a separate distinct dwelling that is not a
Yeah.
two-family home?
Yeah.
So I think that's where we'll get that clarity, because in the definition of family, that should align with single family, two-family
That
home.
definition also has to rely on, if part of our conversation was like addressing that short term that we talked about. That you wanna make sure that your definition isn't, depending on what direction you take,
Yeah.
that it's addressing that as well.
Yeah, well, even with that too, if there is anything we wanna do about the short-term stuff, most of that is gonna come down to like the length of a appropriate lease. As opposed to saying, who or what, because I think that's where we ended up a little bit further along with the ADU stuff was, if it's, the definition of family is important for our town code, because it refers to family in a lot of places. But when we shift to ADUs, the general intent is, let's focus, like, ideally, we're not even saying the word family, because it doesn't matter who lives there, it's whether or not.
Type of dwelling.
Exactly, is this an accessory dwelling to the primary dwelling, or is it a two-family home? Like, that's the major distinction when it comes to the ADU.
One of the other things that we were heavily focused on with family was trying to make sure that it separates what a boarding house would be or a bed and breakfast. So if you are in a dwelling unit, if you have common areas where you go and you lock your bedroom door, that is not a family. So if you're in that, so if you have an ADU, to push it out farther, you have an ADU with its own separate entrance, but then you have 2 or 3 bedrooms in that where they lock their doors, so it's not, and then they're just using the dwelling unit as common area
Or
for
a shared meal preparation.
cooking, things of that nature, then that is not
Like
a
an
family.
Airbnb where
You
can
start
rent
getting
a
into
room.
like,
Well, she referred to like some of the campus housing, like up by a shoe, it's kind of like that.
Right,
Same idea.
but you, again, how often that type of living situation happens around here within a dwelling unit, they are very much catered to being like a bed and breakfast.
Well, and that's
Versus,
where this Pittsburgh came up with the nonprofit, is that if you're renting a room out, that's
No,
not a
that-
family.
yes.
But that's not, but when we're saying with the ADU, it could be, because if you're letting your adult child move in and they're gonna pay you rent, because you need to pay for the ADU you just built, they might be paying rent. So that's where that nonprofit is not by itself a good definition of what you're talking about, that is basically a business. A bed and breakfast or a boarding house is a business.
Yes, that distinction you just made about having your family member pay you rent just kind of threw me for a loop. In that
But I think-
definition, yeah.
When we're considering the
my dad
definition of,
rented to pay rent out.
I think that's the definition of family though, the definition of family will say, these are the people that you would consider a family when you're talking single versus two versus multifamily home. Whereas with an ADU, we don't care who you're renting it to, it's just, I think that's where the nonprofit piece makes a lot of sense, because while, let's say you have a home and you put an ADU on, if the oldest child moves in there, they're still a family, but if they are signing a lease and paying rent, then they are not a family. That in this instance, they are not being treated as a family, and then that really comes down to the definition
Yeah, they're
of.
related, but it's not family dwelling.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Right, this isn't like a referendum on whether or not you're a family.
Yeah,
It's about like we're.
Well, that's why I think that the term family is
Unproductive.
right. And some of the things that a household and then there's a dwelling. So the dwelling has to have the sanitation and the cooking facilities. And the household has to be people, one of these things, that people who live together for, some extended period, regardless of how they're related or not. So that, there's some things that we could do in terms of phraseology that might encompass all the variety of life that people have these days.
Yeah, like if you're renting.
Also, the consideration of what if they have the family member living in there and they're not technically paying rent, they're just helping pay the bills.
Right.
Too.
Or
That's
they're
the way-
providing services, they're providing free caregiving, which would be worth money if somebody else was doing it. it's all those things.
Yeah, well, so you pay in two different instances. In one, you rent a space or you lease a space. And the other is, if somebody requires you to contribute towards the bills or the cost of the living, then that's family, right? But if they designate a space that they're gonna collect money from, then I think that's where we have a multiple dwelling unit, right?
Well,
Even if it's a room, if they're renting a room.
Yeah, I think as Sarah's pointing out, it's truly just the separation of the dwelling unit. When it goes in front of the planning board, I think they're just gonna look at it as another dwelling unit, no matter who's living in there. As long as it meets the criteria set forth, the size, the parking, all all those things, if it meets that, they're not gonna care who you put in there, how many people are, or how you're related.
Yeah.
Because at that point, when you start talking about if you're gonna, like, well, I'm gonna have this as my family member, you're talking about having two dwelling units on a property, and it
And I
really
think
doesn't matter.
It does come down to it, so like the family definition is like when we consider, that this is to allow for better interpretation of existing code. Whereas with ADU, it's almost like a zone change scenario where it's like, you're asking to be approved for a dwelling unit, on a accessory dwelling unit, do not care who lives there, it's your kid for a year, then it's your tenant, it doesn't matter.
But it is what it is, it's built to be an ADU, is it or is it not an ADU?
So I think really the response to Jamie is, the goal is to not have to define family, because we're gonna be focused on like, basically, we're writing a piece of code for the planning board to interpret and approve plans for. So we'll just focus on, the actual construction of it, rather than what the intended use is, because again, you give a separate dwelling unit, you could have your friends come and stay for free, and it's not a short-term rental, there's so many ways you could use it. That, and again, too, it's not like you're coming back, if like you had your kid in it and they were paying you $800 a month, and then you rent it out with a lease at $1,200 a month, you're not coming back to the planning board. So I think that makes a lot of sense to handle it that way.
So I know you did have another thing.
Non-conforming.
The next one is, we have on page 57, it talks about non-conforming use, adding a definition. We were all in agreement to add that, a definition for non-conforming use, but we also need to look at non-conforming structure when in the definition.
I had a thing on that. What is the intent of this?
The intent would be similar to a building that is set within the side yard, front yard setbacks. Or if we're gonna start adding bulk requirements, as in lot coverage, you would be a non-conforming structure or lot versus a non-conforming use, which would be a gas station, retail, or in some.
No longer permits that.
Yeah, in some aspects, residential, like we no longer allow residential structures in industrial, commercial, places of that nature where you have residential structures, you're a non-conforming use.
So on Saintsville Road, the people that actually still have a house there are
Yes,
are
the
non-conforming.
structures themselves are conforming, the use of it being a dwelling unit is not a conforming use, so you could put a business in there with no issues. But we need to look at clarifying.
So
the
let me use that
non-conforming use
example.
versus
So if I live
non-conforming
on
structure.
Saintsville Road and I've lived there forever, and I decide to sell my house to another person to live there, I'm now transaction to a thing that is no longer permitted. Can I sell my house to a person to live there?
You are allowed to do that as long, by the letter of the law, if the use is terminated. And I think Joe Fertaski had a good case law study about the termination of use, where it is just because no one's living in a single family dwelling, as long as it is for sale or under some type of transaction that involves it being a dwelling unit, it has not lost its use as a single family dwelling unit. Because it turns into.
So if you make it into a shop and then want to turn it back to a house, then you can.
Yes,
Okay.
but that happened where a gas station was struck by a vehicle. The gas station went out of operation for a period of time to repair and clean the spill. And they were allowed to return back to the use of a gas station, even though it wasn't a permitted use in that zoning district, because the repair and facilitating of it turning back, reopening is considered being operational.
Continuing the
Yes.
non-conforming.
So for them, I think there would be, for a single family dwelling unit, there'd be a lot of layers we'd have to look into for it to actually stop being a non-conforming use. But something like a gas station, a car dealership where you have a structure, there's no more cars there and it's empty for a period of time, you can say that use stopped.
Okay,
Because it
so
was
is
just,
that what we want to write here, is we want to beef that part up to say those things?
we want to look at defining non-conforming use and non-conforming structure. Though they are outlined in here, this is, it talks about what they are allowed to do. It talks about the point of termination, altering them and things of that nature. But the definition actually defines what they are.
Okay.
Do you wanna propose something, get it together and we'll consider it?
I will do that,
That'd be awesome.
because I'll look at some other similar to what we did for family, I'll look at some other municipalities for what they have for that.
And then the ZBA only had one other thing. On page 61, they're requesting that we put something in for alternate members, mimicking the planning board. So, which is not in here, but in chapter 155, 49.4, there is wording in there for the planning board. For alternate members, they would like the same wording.
Okay, so I'm pulling up the planning board.
Hey Carrie, just to remind everyone, if it's in italics, it's proposed new, right?
Correct.
And so that would be a change to what's already in here.
Right now, we don't have alternate members for zoning board, so they would like to add it. And they would like to use the wording similar to the planning boards.
Yeah, so the planning board is basically, it establishes alternate members, up to 2 appointed by the town board for terms not to exceed 5 years. So that would be off cycle with the normal appointments then, either that or an oversight. Well,
That
was
was
added
probably
to,
copied from another.
So let me just back up 1 second. My question was, so is that the proposed language that's in here now? That's what they wanted?
No, so
No,
I'm reading off-
John's reading
So
it.
we're gonna disregard what's in here and then we're gonna.
Yeah,
Okay.
the proposed language in there is from general code. That is what they're suggesting. John's reading what the ZBA would like that's already in
so
planning
if
board.
we're gonna amend
Prefer to be.
zoning board we should probably amend the zoning board, the alternate should serve for 5 years. And planning board, yeah. Or, I mean, since there's only 2, I mean, it could be different, it doesn't have to be tied to the normal terms. I mean, any, like,
I would almost think you wouldn't want 7 years.
yeah, any strong opinions on how long someone should be appointed as a temporary member or alternate member?
Yeah, more than 3.
More than 3? Yeah. So, I mean,
And we look at it in 2 ways. We look at it from, so the purpose of it is if there's some kind of a big situation where you might have 2 board members that have to abstain to, to help maintain quorum. But the other side, and Jamie had said that the planning board had looked at this in the past as a succession kind of plan. So that somebody that might be interested in being on the planning or zoning board in the future, if they were in that position, they'd have the experience and at least understand and kind of flow into it, so.
That's how the village,
So
so
then.
the village of Fayetteville has alternate members who are non-voting members.
Right.
But if you have to step in, you know what has been.
Yeah, and we brought up a couple situations where a few of us have had to abstain, like my brother-in-law came before us and I abstained from it. And we had enough people to maintain quorum, but there could be situations where that could come into question, so.
So we'll do,
It would have to come down.
so I think then, I mean, we'll discuss with the planning board too, if they have strong feelings about the 5 or 7 years, and then what we'll do is, once this is adopted, we can post openings for alternate members, and then we'll take in applications and we can make those appointments. What we should probably consider doing is if we, because this is gonna take some time to pass, so likely the consideration would be in January at the organizational meeting, we would appoint the alternate members. So what that means is, the plan this year is to start in like October, looking for planning board and zoning board members. And so we'll have to come up with, because I would imagine the intent would be, we have one opening, we have 3 applicants. If we have 2 openings, yeah, exactly. So,
Is there a budgetary impact, like, are the alternates provided with
Oh, that's a
compensation?
good point. Are they compensated? Okay.
It doesn't say in the current one for the planning board. My understanding from Jamie is that it's a voluntary position
that would make
or
sense.
non-compensated.
Yeah.
Did we have anything, Carrie, that was prior to that section we started with? 'Cause I know we went backwards and talked before that. We did.
Not that I had, other than the questions that you guys had regarding the fees, but again, the fees, we went with the standardized based off of what the judge and the chief had
Yeah.
suggested to us.
Yeah,
Not that
I think there was one, I don't even remember which one it was. There was one that went from like either a $5 or a $25 fine. And now in there it says $1,000.
Okay.
But I know Carrie explained that that is based on what the chief said, that it's tied to the penal law versus the other thing.
So
Yeah,
I do have a suggestion about fees. So I want to make sure ZBA is finished with your comments. Did you have anything else, Tom, that you wanted?
No, I know I will just, some of the conversations we did talk about the peddling and soliciting, and I think we clarified that about what the action was if there was someone who was doing that without a permit. We spoke about public assemblies, again, the board's review, how that gets enforced for persons over 200 at a private versus public gathering,
That's on
and
my
that was
list,
discussed.
Yeah, we talked about somebody who was like holding a big backyard wedding or something.
Yeah, and then the other one was assessment, but that is gonna be a later conversation. So that was my summary from our meeting, very briefly.
So my general comment is if it's legal to do it, I would like to remove all the fees from the code and change it to a sentence that says per the fee schedule for this year. So that we don't have to go every January, we don't have to go back and change the code to say, because it says $50 or $1,000, whatever, so just say, if we changed it every place to just say, according to the fee schedule for this year, then you just go every January, you just pass a new fee schedule and it's all there. Because this going back and forth is we're always gonna miss something that gets wrong.
Sarah, would it be also maybe include into that how it ties to penal law?
We could add that too.
Right, so that way, it's not just an arbitrary fee schedule, but it's actually based upon the New York State law.
Yeah, so that sentence could say in compliance with New York State law and the annually approved fee schedule or something like that, so.
We can find one.
I just think that would
I think
it'd
we
be a
just,
lot easier to manage.
yeah, we had talked about that when we first started this review
Yeah.
process, so.
So that was that. So that was my main sort of general comment.
As per the adopted or
Yeah.
fee schedule.
And then we can ask general code to do that, just every place it says a fee to change it to that. sentence.
Literally, they have it pretty well laid out. So, yeah, we'll just have to, have the same language for each
For each one.
penalty or refer to the adopted.
And then the section whatever would be the adopted fee schedule.
Yeah.
And then you just copy it according to that. So I want to know if the other counselors have
Do you
things.
have anything in specific that you wanted to talk about? I know we've been talking about this, kind of talked about it with a lot of the different councils and stuff throughout the weeks. Was there anything specific that we wanted to cover while we have? For the subject?
I think I brought up everything I read. Yeah, the last section.
So I did, so Caitlin, did you have anything else to know?
No.
104. I wanted to bring up the septic category one, section 104. First, it's mislabeled as sewers and it really means septic, but I'm believing that this could just be eliminated. I don't know that the town has any role in this. I think it's just the Department of Health and we don't need to be involved.
The only thing I think we had thought of is that there was an incident that made us adopt this. Whether some type of disposal company's truck crashed or some type
But
of
wouldn't that
illicit,
then become a,
some type of
thing or
illicit
something? Like, it
discharge
wouldn't be us.
happened. Yeah,
You're not gonna go clean it up.
no, I think it's just that, again, I feel like there was a catalyst for this implementation of this code. What that was, I'm not sure. Because the cat and mouse game of this would be
Yeah, I just think,
extensive and
I don't think we should
exhaustive.
have rules we can't enforce.
Again, yeah, too, if there was an issue, the EPA,
They
DEC,
would've been
every
all over
three-letter
it.
acronym would
Yeah.
be
So I
there.
don't think we need to, I think there's things we don't need to be part of. So that was one I just thought we could get rid of it. The Department of Health is responsible. If there were to be an accident, everybody would be on it immediately anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to think that someone in a pickup truck with a 50-gallon drum is going around emptying septic tanks and disposing of it improperly, but
You never know.
that's kind of something
Well,
that,
I'm thinking that
we
might
may-
be a campground or something, but,
yeah,
you know.
if there's some type of, if that was, again, whether there was or wasn't a catalyst for this,
But it hasn't happened since 1991, so I think we're
yeah,
fairly
we
safe.
have
So we're
not.
about due, like the cicadas, it always comes back.
All right,
I
I will
do-
be proven wrong when you
I-
let me know about
I
that.
do,
pickup.
I do agree with you, though, that there is definitely other oversight for probably, the DOT probably has that for any type of hauler, so you've gotta go through and get a DOT number. There would be multiple people that would
So
have
I
a checks and
think
balance on that
So,
before us as a
Maybe what
town.
we'll do is we will reach out to a couple of relevant agencies that we think would be responding, double check with them. And then maybe it's a policy and procedure we adopt where, if we're notified about something, I guess we contact these people. And then, once we have something in place that dictates what happens, because we have something on the books for like, hey, if this happens, there's penalties and a licensing structure. If we're gonna get rid of that, let's just make sure we've got it in place. Or even, rename it to septic and say, our policy, in
Is
the
that
code
you do
is
whatever
do
DEC
this,
says.
and then, because the only thing in there that I would worry about just full sale removing is the licensure part. License required, so like right now, no person shall engage in the business of septic tank service operator without first having obtained a license therefore from the town clerk. It is a $5 license every year, and we have some pretty
So we should
basic
ask the
stuff.
town clerk, has anybody ever asked you for that?
Not in my time as a town.
That's a good answer, right?
And I think they think they're okay once they have that, and they just operate. So I
Within-
went down
So,
through my notes, I
okay,
had
here's a
something.
factual thing, I don't believe that's ever
I
happened.
don't believe so either.
Okay.
In
So we're
conversations
not,
with
we're
Allison,
not doing this, we shouldn't have it on.
We just need to make sure every
Delete
piece that
it.
we're removing, that there is some other agency that has jurisdiction that, so like if the county licenses these
Yeah.
folks, we don't have to be involved in the
Right.
licensing.
Yeah.
So we'll just check with every other agency for each piece we're removing and just make sure that it's handled by someone else with jurisdiction.
And they wanna remove more sewage in our town because we took away fees, and they'll be happy. Not that they ever paid them, but, at least they see their government. doing it.
We're running out of time, so there's just one more, there's one thing I just might need clarification, so page 29, pest control. and correct me if I'm wrong, 'cause it's pre my time on this board, but I thought that in 2020 or 2021, the town did adopt noise ordinance with a specific decibel level. And so this references not having a specific decibel level.
Oh, good
Good
catch.
catch, because we did do that.
We definitely did that.
Yeah, here.
I think it was
You said
60,
page
but I don't know.
Page 29, yeah, the chapter 86 starts on 28, the paragraph, the question is 29.
So,
Yep.
what I would guess is that there's a chance that when we amended the noise control policy, we might have had less some language in there.
Right, because this paragraph in top 29 is clearly no longer correct.
Right.
We don't rely on community standards, we rely on scientific data.
Yeah.
Yeah, good catch.
Yeah, and so we have, and,
Who's measuring the decibels for police?
but we may have done this, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe that's their protocol at this
They
time.
have a decibel measure. If they can stand,
Well, I have one, I'll do it.
if they happen to be there when somebody's shooting off their firearm.
Only if it's only a firearm?
Well,
So
whatever,
it's
anything that makes that noise.
Okay,
But-
like loud music.
Well, it would be the fireworks.
Well, so
that-
here, let me just, so the noise ordinance that we have on the books defines unnecessary noise based on a decibel reading.
Mhm.
And then it states also that it's the decibel reading at the property line. So if the decibel rating is under a certain limit within your own property, no one. This is about going to the property line when your neighbor is blasting the stereo or,
Or standing on your side of the fence and
Yes.
it's that
It's on
loud,
your side.
it goes above the decibels.
and then there's just certain prohibited noises. There's burglar alarms that go off for a certain amount of time, construction and operation of machinery. So there's a lot of call outs there that handle most of what we deal with, but yeah, well, so what I'm seeing right here is, so section I, under prohibited noises, is decibel maximum. The making or operation of any source of sound on a private property or any public space or right of way in such a manner to create a sound level that exceeds the particular sound level limit set forth as follows. Between 7 AM and 10 PM, 70 decibels. Between 10 PM and 7 AM, 50 decibels. So what we really did was we added a catch on it. So rather than, and I believe that replaced that language, that community standards, but we can double check. And we should check with general code to see, were they pulling this from a,
I think we passed that noise ordinance after they did this review.
well, so this was added in April of 2021.
And this was 2019 at this.
So there we go.
But we don't want to send this back with with markups on here that are going to reflect changes that we've already made. So we should probably inform general code for all the ones that we have modified after 2019, that
There's a new law. they
that
just need
we
to
have a
approve.
new law.
Yeah,
Because there are a couple of them.
That's
we
what this
have
process,
modified,
we
so
have
we
to
should-
tell, we have to tell them every new law we
Yeah.
passed since 2019.
well, and two, that also seems like the type of thing that when we're done and they deliver us the giant resolution or multiple resolutions, we'll have to go through and check and make sure that there's no adjustments to things that have been
But
fixed.
we have a record of every law we passed, so every year since 2019, we can say we did these laws.
Well, we
did those
could,
laws.
I mean, if they're willing, we could either do
No,
that
that's what-
in-house or send that over.
Well, no, it's their job.
Okay, great.
We just send them all the laws that we passed since then, and say incorporate it.
I believe we have like an Excel spreadsheet with all the laws
Yeah.
that we could always send over easily.
I
So,
had one question on page 20 and 21. It's 55 bingo.
We don't have bingo. We don't have anybody that
Does bingo at
does
all
bingo in the town.
legally? So are we saying to get rid of that, or just, I just want to understand, they're saying just keep 1 and 2, and that's all it would be, and then under where it says no, there's italicized language, are we proposing, it only has section 1, section 2, and then this italicized language?
I don't think we can get rid of it because of the potential of somebody deciding if they want to do bingo. I mean, as of right now, we don't have anybody that is registered to do bingo or has any permits for
And
that.
that's because it's considered gambling.
Yes.
So it says, this is revised chapter, so it contains only the 2 sections above. So everything else would be removed. It would just contain the 2 sections. But then below that where it says no, if the town decides to do that, we have to add what's in italicized font below that?
So I think, so this is where, let's see. The bingo chapter is longer than what we're seeing just here, the
Yes.
section of the 1 and the 2.
Right.
So what they're calling out is that, you know, we have restrictions on like a prize amount. So that is not consistent with general
We want to
municipal
take that
law.
out and replace it with this.
With essentially a reference to general municipal law. So that would be the planning.
Okay,
Stop being.
kind of like we're doing the fee chart, there's reference to GML,
Yep.
and then, okay, that's all I wanted to.
Anything else? Great. We will adjourn this meeting and then the town board meeting will continue, will start at 6:30. Thank you.
Take your time.
You got it, you got time.